I have some PDFs. For example, you can see the most of the web applications are based in JavaScript. Introduction to JavaScript. So why we are over here? Because you can see JavaScript are mainly used in the web application part. JavaScript does it all, but what is the JavaScript and how it makes the things too smooth? The main reason with the JavaScript, the dynamic web application stands for three pillars. Dynamic means it gonna change for the according to the environment, according to the resources. So our major objective over here is to simply penetrate or simply learn the basic concept how the web application works. For example, the three pillars are your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript. For example, they have given what is the use of HTML. HTML which defines up to complete the structure. It's a body type here. It's a body of a human, or you can say anything. CSS describe overlook and feel, and the overlook means the interaction, the output, the look, you can say. JavaScript which simply adds powerful interaction to the application such as alert box, rollover effects, drop down menus, and other things as it programming languages of the web. So you can see over here we have a simple web page, but over here the three things which is important is your JavaScript, your HTML, and your CSS. So if you want to learn some basic languages of the web application part, I'm not saying to learn the programming languages, just need to understand the code, and it's not going to take any 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So the most important thing over here, you can see the JavaScript is considered to be one of the most powerful scripting languages, and 90% of the total websites are based in JavaScript. 93% of the websites, think about this one. So is it easy to learn? It's helped to build interactive web application. It is the only programming language can be interpreted by the browser. See, it is flexible and simply get blended with the HTML codes. So the major consideration of this one is to simply penetrate the skills one by one, which can be leaders for information gathering part. For example, you can see over here, JavaScript handler. Why I'm showing you this thing? Because XSS, cross-site scripting, is the major part of your JavaScript. And if you look for the books which I already mentioned you before, the real world hacker handbook, the web application hacker handbook. If you go through these things, you will find the lots of other attractive things. See, the 12th one. The 12th one is mentioning you attacking users, cross-site scripting. And the most important thing, they are going to show you the basic three components, which is your HTML, CSS, and your JavaScript. The major advantages over here is to learn the basic concept, how it works. And why I'm showing you the real world bug bounty book, because it will show you the how they represent the bug, the web application penetration testing part. So if you see over here, there would be lots of chapters. Yeah, see. Bug bounty basic, open redirection, HTTP, parameter pollutions, cross-site record forgery, HTML injection and content spoofing, carriage data line feed injection, cross-site scripting. So if you go over here with the 7th chapter, type of cross-site scripting given over here. So the basic concept, when you are simply learning something new concept, read about the core mechanism, because never go for the attacking phase. Go for the basic how the application works. Cross-site scripting explains how attacker exploit a site doesn't sanitize user input to execute their own JavaScript code on the site. Sanitize means the server should be validate that query before it's basically executing on the server side, because JavaScript is just a client-side attack. So if you look for, let's go down to the chapter 7. Yes. So over here, cross-site scripting, one of the most famous examples. Yeah, Let's have a look over here. Process scripting vulnerability is a Mac-based semi-version created by the Semi in the year of 2005. See, this vulnerability was introduced by a person in the year of 2005. Most of the vulnerabilities has been discovered. For example, you will see most over here is the JavaScript payload. Allowed him to store a JavaScript payload on his profile. Whenever a login user would visit to the MySpace profile, the payload will be executed because the payload has been stored from in the server side. And whenever the client is visited over there, it's gonna show a pop-up. Over here, you can see they have given all the other things which can be help us over here. If a site properly sanitize the characters render the HTML entities. For example, the page source of the web page is like this. See, double quote, single quote, backslash, greater than, smaller than, and you can see the alteration part. The most important thing is to understand how the JavaScript programming works. So that's why we're gonna check this one. Before going for the attacking phase, read about the core mechanism, how the application works, and how it will be effective for us to understand. When a JavaScript code is embedded over the HTML page, you see over here that the JavaScript will react on some of the specific event. The JavaScript is basically embedded, means it can be coded, it can be merged over there. When the page loaded up, it is an event. See, when the page is loaded up, it's an event. So it's an application which is going on the backend side query. When the user click on a button, that click to the event. Other examples such as pressing any key, choosing a Windows, resizing a Windows. Therefore, such events are managed and some event handlers. See? So they have given some operators over here. Some operators like your onload, your on mouse over. These are some operators that can be work on your JavaScript side. JavaScript uses onload function to load an object over a web page. Onload. It means we can simply load our application on the server side. So over here, they have given an example that could be help us to understanding the basic concept. For example, they have given a body type. A body type, see over here, it's just like normal you can say JavaScript. A body which contains an onload. An onload, which is over here, we know that it's a loaded object on the web pages, and they have mentioned an alert function. Alert. The alert function over here is basically describe a pop-up over here. Let me show you one thing in the real life scenarios. For example, let's have a website. So I'm going to take a test php.oneweb.com. So let's have a look. So I'm going to take only this parameter, which is a search parameter. Let's see if we can find Craw over here. Yeah, we can find the Craw, but the most important thing, how the Craw is balancing. Craw is balancing on the h2 tag of the HTML. Header 2, which is an HTML tag. So over here, if you see h2 id is equal to page name and search for id is equal to, which is we know about this one, I guess, a column name from the database. So let's try a simple payload. So in the JavaScript, we can write a script code, a normal script, and you can add the script, a backslash, a forward slash, and a script. So over here, this is our mediator, and our payload would be over here. So I'm going to use an alert function. Alert function will be show us a pop-up on the server side, which could be lead us to anything. And I'm going to pop up my name, and I'm going to use you can use a double quote, or you can left the double quote. So I'm going to use right. I'm adding my name, which is Partho Mandal, and let's have a look. What will happen if I simply run a JavaScript script over a parameter? Nothing happened. Why? Because this was a string over here. So according to the programming language, a string should be encapsulated with a single quote or a double quote. Let's try with this one. and I can see my name now. The major function of alert is to simply pop up the application or the message, and otherwise you can try the body or onload function. The major objective of this alert function is to simply show you how the JavaScript works. Body, onload, alert. Welcome to the hacking. So over here you can see, so whenever the body tag loads up, an alert will pop up with the following text: welcome to hacking articles. The loading of the body tag is event. See, a body tag is event where an application will be pop up on the application as per the data is given over here. React. See this one. Onload is an event handler which decides when what action should be happen on the event part. For example, you can see on mouse over. This is a different operator, and we have a different operator also. On mouse over. On mouse. So you have seen this one when you are simply visiting any of the pages, and when you simply go down and suddenly your mouse move to a different resource and there's a pop-up, visit this page or some resources which was hidden. With the on mouse over event handler, when a user move his cursor over a specific text, the embedded JavaScript will be executed. See, sometimes we have experienced these things. When the user moves the cursor over the display text on the page, an alert box will be pop up with a 50% of discount. So it's a normal thing. Why? Because they have given an assign a part. On mouse over. Alert. 50% discount. Surprise. And they simply close the tag. So there are lots of things can be happen. The on mouse over, the on load. We should know about the basic concept of the web application part. These are the payloads that you can create when you are experienced in the JavaScript code. For example, let's talk about this cross scripting. So if you talk about the word cross-site scripting, is your attack, which is a client-side coded attack. Client-side coded attack. You can see over here, cross-site scripting often embedded of XSS is a client-side code injection attack, which malicious scripts are injected into trusted website. Trusted website means the legitimate websites. XSS occurs over those web applications where the input parameter is not properly sanitized or valid, which does allow an attacker to send malicious JavaScript code over the different end user. End user means we, or which is working on that specific website. For example, they have given a proper pop-up over here. In this attack, the user are not directly targeted through the payload. All through the attacker showed the accessibility by inserting a malicious script in a web page. The most important thing, the payload we have created. And over here, for the example, they are showing you a pop-up on the web application part. That appears to be genuine part of the web page. So when a user visit that website, the XSS suffering web page will be deliver the malicious JavaScript and directly over the browser without the knowledge. The search parameter, as we have mentioned over here, we have used the search parameter like this one. We have created a simple JavaScript page. Let's do Craw Security. So our major concern is when a parameter is over there, we can simply try to check one by one all the possibilities over there. Simple, this application will show you how a JavaScript payload will work. Simple, see this one. They have given a proper example. Script tag. If you doesn't know about the script tag, a basic Java programming, you can simply search for the Geek for Geek website. What is the basically script tag used for? There is no need of programming languages if you are not required. So if you search over here, you can write script in Java. What exactly the script is used for? Some of the people are new here. So some of the people are working with I'm going to do a bug bounty or the web application part, but they should know the basic knowledge what they are using currently. The script element either contains a scripting statement. A scripting statement will be a query, or it point to the external script file through a source attributes. SRC. SRC, remember the source. Common use of JavaScript are image manipulations for validation and dynamic changes of content. Dynamic changes of content means the appearance of the website. There lots of things can be happen over there. So our major concern would be to check all the possibilities one by one, which can be lead us for the information gathering part. There are lots of techniques, but when you are simply going for the examination part or some of the other things, go for the core mechanism. If you want to learn JavaScript, there is a W3 School website also. See. In HTML, JavaScript code is inserted between the script tags. In HTML, see this one. Script, and the Java code, which you want to pop up. So the major objective of this one to simply have a code, but what will be happen when an attacker simply run some malicious code or Java code over there? What will be the possibilities? What happening? Let's make it more clear for the following example. Consider a web application that allows its user to set their descriptions. Description means the title they want to, all over his profile, which is visible to everyone. Now the attacker noticed that the description field is not properly validating the input. Validating the input means it's basically having an attributes or single quote or double quote, and they are not sanitizing the query parameter. Sanitizing means the breaking the query or input validation from the server side. Input validation is a technique where each and every query will be checked in the server side when the client is executing. So he is injecting the malicious code in the field. So over here we can see a malicious code has been filled on the JavaScript field. Whenever the visitor view the attacker profile, the code will get automatically executed by the browser, and therefore it's capture of the authenticated cookies. And over the other side, the attacker would have a victim active session because he just completed a proper thing. For example, see, a website is given over there, an attacker is over here. Browser will execute the embedded script as the login session IDs and password to the attacker. Through the cross-site scripting, there are many other things can be happen. We can steal the data, we can deface the website, and we can change the content of the web application. If the website is not proper, sanitizing the queries. So over here, they have given lots of further things. For example, the most important thing, impact of the cross-site scripting. So impact of the cross-site scripting is basically a disaster. From the last decade, cross-site scripting has managed in the position of owasp top 10. As we have mentioned, the owasp top 10, and over here they have reporting to the 2013 to 2017. In 2013, it was A3. With the advance of the web application security, XSS dropped down at the A7. A7, A3 are the positions according to the web applications management. So what could be the possibilities an attacker can do with the help of cross-site scripting? Therefore, over this vulnerability, attacker could see what could be the things an attacker can possibly perform. Capture the access user authentication session cookies, authenticated part. Uploading a phishing page to alert the user to initiate actions. Redirect the visitor in some other malicious actions. Expose the user sensitive data. Malicious manipulates the structure of the web application even for deface it. See, this was the most modern thing. Through the JavaScript, lots of attackers can perform these kinds of things. But I will say the last thing is the important part. It can deface the website also. So over here, if you look over here in the bottom side, cross-site scripting has been reported as CSS, CVSS code, which is your 6.1, which is medium severity under. and that would be your CVWE 979 and 80, which is your input neutralization of input during the web application generation, which is your process scripting. This is the sense part, which I taught you in the very first day. Sense web applications. And the last thing is your improper neutralization of scripts related HTML tags, which is your basic XSS. So they have given two things, remember, 79 and 80. These things are important because these are the codes to examine the web application part. Input validation of during the web page or generation, impacting on the web application part. And the 81, basically it's embedded to the HTML tag. So you can see over here CSS score is 6.1 and testing ID, which is impact value medium. So what are the types of process scripting? First of all, up till now there might be lots of process scripting, but we're gonna go through the most of the three parts, the major three parts over here. So the first one is your stored XSS, second one is your reflected XSS, third one is your DOM based XSS, and the fourth one is your blind XSS. These three types of XSS are worked in the major part in the web application scenarios. For example, we're going to talk about the stored one. The stored one is known as persistent. If I talk about the word persistent, persistence means it will be stored on the server side. Stored often termed as persistent XSS, which is your type I. Over the thought, this vulnerability is the injected malicious scripts get permanently stored inside the web application database server and further drops its outbreak whether the user visit the respective website. There is a time in 2018, a UPC website has been hacked by a 17 years student with the help of process scripting. And the most important thing, the website is based on Java. Most of the websites are based on JavaScript. So that's why you have to figure out where JavaScript can be embedded. So over here you can see a stored XSS where a client request has been stored on the server side permanently. When a visitor visit over there, it can really pop up the application code. So see, we consider this one. This happens in a way as when the client clicks on, however, a particular infected section. Infected section means the page. For example, so I'm gonna log in over here. So sometimes this is a testing website, and yeah, see over here. I'm gonna place my payload over here, which will be my this simple payload. See, now I'm logging out. Now the data has been stored on the server side. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna test and test. Okay, it's okay. Okay, it's been okay. There's a problem over here. Let's do sign up, I guess. Your profile. Okay. Okay, this website is in maintenance, I guess that's why it's not working properly. So your profile, if the data has been stored on the server side, it will be a stored XSS. See, so it's a stored XSS which is showing a pop-up of the Craw Security as I mentioned in alert function. See this one. When you're the data has been updated over there properly, but it's on maintenance type. That's why it's removing all the things one by one. So over here you can see the infected JavaScript will be executed by the browser if it was already in the application database. Therefore, the attack does not require any phishing techniques to get its user. The most important thing when you're simply doing some cross-site scripting, the most common example of stored access is the comment options, because comment options stored the data on the server side, the commenting part, which allows any user to enter his feedback in form of comment and administrator of the other users. For example, we can see they have given an example one by one. Whenever the user hits the submit button, his entry can be stored in the database. To make it more clear, the database table will be screen on this table on the screen. Here, the developer trusts its user hadn't placed the validation of the field. See, so this loophole will encountered by the attacker there, and he can take advantages instead of submitting the feedback. So in the comment field, what he gonna do? He gonna try to simply pop up a malicious piece of code. From the below screenshot, you will have the attacker got successfully at the web application reflect on the alert pop-up. Because if there is an stored XSS, it will store on the server side. So there are many other things can be happen over there one by one, which can be lead us for information gathering part. See, sometimes you will see a pop-up like this one in the real life scenarios. The most important thing, the data validation, which is stored on the server side. And over here, if you see, the next one is your reflected, which is your non-persistent, means it's not gonna save on the server side, it's gonna simply pop up on the client side display. So over here, if you see over here, the reflected process, you can also term as non-persistent XSS, which is your type 2, occurs when the web application responds immediately on the user client without validating the user entered. This can be lead an attacker to inject browser executable codes into the single HTML response. It's termed as non-persistent. Records will not save on the server side, as I mentioned you, because stored is the only process scripting payload which can be stored on the server side, and the reflected will be pop up the query in immediately on a single click. So, for example, you can see they have given a proper scenario. You can go over here. Reflected access is the most common and thus can be easily found over the website search field. When the attacker includes something arbitrary JavaScript code in the search text, and if the website is vulnerable, the web page will return an event as described in the cross-site scripting. But what are the major types of attacks of cross-site scripting? There are get-based and post-based. Get-based, the data which is transferring from the URL section, and the post-based, which is transferring the data on the post or any of the field of the comment field. It could be anything over there. So they are simply giving a proper pop-up over here. Just, so we are not going to take this one. So I'm going to show you how it considered to be one of the part. So let me show you how the reflected course description looks like. So over here we have a search parameter. So the most important thing when a user is login, let's try to steal the document.cookies part. So document.cookie. So document.cookie will fetch out all the session IDs which is logged on the server side. So let's try over here. So over here, let me check. I'm going to paste my cookie over here. So, see, test and user test. The %2 is the /. So let's try over here. We have been hacked. Someone has written something over there. This is a testing website. So remember that everyone is trying to simply execute their queries. So over here we can see that this parameter was not executed. The percentage will show you all the payloads type that you want to execute. And if you see over here, they have given the same thing, the port swagger which I mentioned you. It's all about to check all the possibilities where we can find the relevant data. The reflected cross-site scripting is basically based on the client single click part. So over here, the most important thing, why it's being vulnerable. So they have given why, wonder why all it's happened. Let's check the following codes in snippet. So they are simply saying why the code execution is working over there. See, backend side the PHP will work over there. Function, they have given input parameter and return input. So between the input, they are not given any specification. Just like for you have simply any sanitization and input validation, they have simply just given input from the client side and return an input from the server side. So the most important part they have given, they didn't mention the input validation part. Input validation means whatever the client side is simply requesting, it should be validated on the server side. If you see over here, the developer didn't set up an input validation over the ingress function and simply echo the search message through the get variables. See over here, this would be a proper code. If asset is equal to get search, get search, and they have given the echo part. Again, you have search for, but they didn't mention anything till now. The vulnerable code is basically depends on the application, what kind of data is looking for. For example, if you search for the DOM based XSS, DOM is the most important thing. The DOM based cross-site skipping the vulnerability which appears in the document object model rather than the HTML tag. DOM means the document, the environment that you're working over there on the website part. And what exactly the document object model is. A DOM or a document module example, it describes of the different web page segments look different web page segment like your title, your heading, your tables, your forum, etc., which is on a specific application on the functionality of the web page. When the hierarchical structure of the web HTML page, like your API, increase the skills of the developers to produce the changes and HTML and XML document. So there could be a proper way that will lead us to information gathering part. And most of the things is to check all the possibilities. So our major perspective of this one is to simply penetrate our skills one by one, and which can be lead us for information gathering part. For example, you can see how does a DOM and document works. Simply consider this one, a document, a data which is given over there. Root element, which is your HTML. See, in HTML, you can see headers, titles, and my titles, which is your DOM part over here. Elements. And if you talk about the other HTML elements over here, you can see body type, href, which is your hyperlink, 8 element, h1 element, my links, and my headers. They have classified the things. You can simply have to merge which should become a head, which is a header, a title, a my title, a body which contains that functionality, which is an event, as I mentioned you, event handler to react or application to be executed. Href is a hyperlink over there. You can see one by one they have given. Therefore, DOM manipulation is itself not a problem, but when JavaScript handles the data insecurely in the DOM, that enables various attacks. The most important thing is to simply check which is your DOM based XSS. So if you see over here, DOM based vulnerability usually arise when the JavaScript takes data from an attacker controllable source, such as URL, and it passes to the sink. The data which is passing through the URL, it not should be on the URL, it could be anything. just like your element or header, which is a in DOM in part. A dangerous JavaScript function is a DOM object as eval. Eval function is the most important part because it will execute the server-side arbitrary code execution. Yes. So the most important thing when you are simply finding the cross-site scripting on the major part, think about the vulnerabilities. This is a quite different from reflected and stored because over it in this attack, the developer cannot find the malicious script in the HTML source. See, as well as the HTML response, it could be observed from the execution time. It will not shows any response code on the server side. It could be lead in various techniques. See this one, they are using DVW over here. Didn't understand well. Let's check a DOM-based environment access protocol. The following application was therefore vulnerable on a DOM-based XSS attack. The web application further permits its user to option a language with the following displayed option. For example, we have done the DVW, but over here you see, they in the DOM-based process scripting there was an element, the element which basically was used for selecting the language over there. So it was English, French, or Spanish over there. So they have given simple from the web screen. You can see we do not have any specific section where we could include our malicious code. Therefore, in order to deface this website, we now manipulate from the URL section. See, it was default, which is our DOM environment, which is your title, head, or element. So, for example, they have using a simple script, just like in JavaScript over here. They are given script alert. This is your DOM XSS and script. See. The most important thing is to simply identify the attack type, which can be lead for information gathering. And further things can be happen over there one by one. The major perspective is it's a totally different thing. The major difference between the DOM and DOM XSS and the reflected in the store that it cannot be stopped by the server-side filter. See, because anything written after the hash will never forward to the server. See, hash, which is your comment out, but if the comment out, it's going to execute the both of the things. So you should know about the basic concept of the programming. That would be help us for the leading part. The last one we can talk about the blind XSS, and the blind XSS is not much used, but we should know about this one tag. And we can try the practical also, because over here, if you see the real-time vulnerability, most of the attackers are using different kind of things. The most important thing is the code which is written in HTML and between the JavaScript. You can see this is the JavaScript. So they have found a vulnerability on the wholesale, which is on year 2015 on 21st of December. Then they have mentioned over there one by one. So our major perspective is to simply check all the possibilities one by one, which can lead us for information gathering part. The most important thing is to check the source code, and this book will help you a lot to understand the basic knowledge of JavaScript. But why I'm showing you these 3 books, because you have to consider, you have to simply make your own notes between the different resources that could be lead us for information part. So over here, if you talk about the blind XSS, many times the attacker does not know where the payload will be end up and if or when, and it will get executed. So we don't know when the payload will execute and where is it. So there are times when the injected payload will execute in different environment. For example, administrator or someone else. Okay, it means if we simply place the payload and there is no execution on our side, so it will be executed from someone else of the company application. For example, the end users or the developing team. In order to exploit such vulnerabilities, he blindly deploy up for a series of malicious payloads over the web application, and thus application stored in the database. Okay, he does into the user pool payload. So over here, simply they are saying that the payload will execute it from the server side, and it will be wait for the specific period of time to execute from someone else. So now they have given the cross-site scripting exploiting part. So cross-site scripting exploiting part. So it's we know that this is just a pop-up application. Whenever the script has been loaded, so it will show on pop-up on the server side, and when we are simply submitting a data over there, it will simply go for all the things one by one. So let's have a look.